All right, so funny story. I sat down to watch the new Netflix dramatic thriller, Fair Play, and my wife told me we'd already watched it. Now, apparently, we saw it at Sundance, but I had zero recollection of how the story played out, with only a vague remembrance of a couple of moments. Does that mean it's a forgettable film? No, not necessarily. I mean, I watch a ton of content, so I'm bound to forget some of what I've watched. But I did rewatch it for this review. So is it any good? An unexpected promotion at a cutthroat hedge fund pushes a young couple's relationship to the brink, threatening to unravel far more than the recent engagement. This stars Phoebe Dynevor and Alden Ehrenreich, with Eddie Marsan and Rich Sommer making an appearance as well. Now, the story, it's a stressful and taxing tale of a dysfunctional couple who starts off as loving and then spiral into destruction as their work and private lives just begin to clash. Now, the whole tone of the narrative is driving and urgent. And it's similar to Uncut Gems, just not so unnerving and strained. Now, a lot of this is thanks to the wonderful commitment from Dynevor and Ehrenreich. They convey amazing passion within their performances. And passion doesn't always mean loving or kind, just intense and fierce. Now, I love the power plays that are also highlighted within the story. Both characters, they work at the same hedge fund where the pressure is extreme and unhealthy, basically just sucking the life from anyone who's not at the top of the food chain and then still demanding constant attention from those in charge. Now, both characters, they start out as equals, which keeps either of them from being threatened by the other's job performance. But when one of them gets a promotion, that's when the crap starts to hit the fan. And it's just like this continuous rain of poop as things go from great to bad to dismal to terrible before finally reaching unthinkable. I mean, this is truly a descent into destruction, where the whirlwind of emotions and ego destroy far beyond the couple's working relationship. I think that once the promotion is given to a character, the majority of the following events and the storytelling devices, they become predictable. Their trajectories, they're telegraphed pretty clearly, with only a few surprises sprinkled in. And that doesn't mean, though, that the movie becomes uninteresting or boring. It was still very captivating, like just watching a car wreck, except that the cars involved are knowingly and willingly continuing to crash into each other for the maximum amount of devastation. Now, this story is not for the depressed or melancholy. It already contains a ton of darkness and will work to increase the mood in whoever watches. Now, I was enthralled with the two characters, watching them slowly and then very quickly dismantle what they had worked to establish. I mean, it's not a happy story by any means, but the progression of the characters can be very satisfying. Now, even though we don't get a ton of actual insight into the workings of the hedge fund, we're shown enough to see how the environment is just utterly toxic and then wickedly demoralizing. It feels a lot like the mentalities that encompass Boiler Room and Glengarry Glen Ross, where the only acceptable outcome is success, and not minor success, but massive wins and gains. Now, this mindset, it also works to establish very domineering and poisonous attitudes, where it's not even dog eat dog, but it's annihilation of the weak in the blink of an eye. Now, something that may seem a bit daunting is that the film is just short of 2 hours, so it's asking audiences to endure the oppressive and noxious tones for an extended period of time. And a lot of what we watch transpire, it's not only cruel, but it can be harmful and even violent too. There's not an overwhelmingly large amount of violence, but when it happens, whew, it's disturbing and nasty. Now, I loved watching the power struggle and the power shift that the characters undergo. There's a clear pecking order that's assumed right at the start, but then it flips on its head and it subverts the status quo to create a new power schema. This also works to illuminate biases and deeply held prejudices without coming across as preachy. The story is effective at conveying these ideas while still making them accessible and somewhat palatable. I mean, I say somewhat because it's so dark and unhealthy, but it's also gripping. Now, probably the largest shortcoming of this story is because of the predictable arc. So much of what we see feels like it's all going to end in futility. The audience is tasked with enduring the growing emotional devastation that the couple is undergoing, while also riding out the runtime towards a finish line that we can see coming. I mean, is it going to leave you in the bell jar? Perhaps. There is an area of strength and resolve that I think is wonderful and warranted, creating a clear and plausible resolution. So is it going to be satisfying? I think it depends on your takeaway. If you focus on the dissolution of a friendship, then it can simply just be depressing without much hope. But if you look at it as injustice and prejudice being conquered, then yeah, it's a rewarding experience where the appropriate people get some comeuppance. Now, for me, I was able to latch on to both of those feelings, embracing the dour and distressing relationship story while also cheering on the success of overcoming toxic mentalities. I still wanted to take a shower, though, after watching. It just left me with this overall yucky feeling. Now, I'm a big fan of the cinematography in this, particularly with all of the close up, in your face shots that just invade the character's privacy to highlight the twitching of their eyes or maybe even the spittle that's coming from their mouths in moments of extreme emotions. Now, we're shown the fiery passion emanating from a character as they experience drastic emotional highs and lows, sinking into sadness or then rising in rage, and the camera is right there to capture it all. There's also a good use of the score, background noises, and obscure dialogue to just create sequences of audible chaos and distraction. These moments illustrate the frenzied mindset a character is experiencing in the moment, attempting to keep from crashing and burning in a meltdown while their world is burning down around them. Now, I love the tension this created, and also appreciate that the technique wasn't overused, making the few times it was employed very effective. Now, the coloring and lighting, they're excellent at enhancing the power struggles that we watch play out, creating ominous settings with lowly lit sequences that also enhance the feeling of loneliness and isolation, even when characters are together. There's also cold and harsh lighting in the office settings, matching the emotional tone of the interactions that take place there. They're detached, biting, and mean. So overall, Fair Play is a tumultuous character study of ambition, love, and power where all three clash in a fiery and horrendously engaging dramatic thriller. Both Dynevor and Ehrenreich chew through their scenes and each other as they play out the increasingly stressful destruction of a relationship. And while the story arc is obvious and predictable, the tone of the narrative is complemented nicely by the cinematography and lighting, maintaining the turbulent agitation as emotions flare. There's sex, nudity, an absolute ton of profanity, and some brutal and disturbing violence, including sexual assault. I give Fair Play 4 out of 5 couches. So what's a stressful thriller that you've seen that you liked? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this review, please give it a like. Also, don't forget to share and subscribe. I'm Chris. This is Movies and Munchies. Thanks for couching with me.